my name, thinking I won't be the same. Turn fiction into fact. See what you didn't know, bruises that'll never show, slipping on your every jab. So tighten up your fist, step into the ring with this. I hope your mama's got your back. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a bus. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a bus. Oh, 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 oh. Just 'cause I took a break, you're making a huge mistake, thinking you can take the throne. Look at you trembling, step into the lion's den. Bet you wish you stayed at home. Begging for mercy underneath your breath when I ain't even sweating. Yeah, my legend's written in the stone. Yeah, you're crying danger in defeat is now your only friend. Even your mama's gotta know. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a bus. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a bus. Oh, 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 First round, fifth round, final round. Oh, 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 yeah. First round.
Hello, hello. Oh, and yeah, once again, yeah, my camera didn't come up. What can you do? We should fire our producer. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Nicholas Lamar Suter. This is In Time. With us today are Operator Starsky and Commander McMillan. I'll be introducing them in just a minute. We'd like to okay, yeah, thank you. This is a call-in show, so if you guys would like to ask a question of Operator Starsky, you can call in 484-2-IN-TIME. It's also pinned in the live chat, so you can just call in and listen to the show while you wait, and we'll go through the questions, and you can ask your question live. So we hope you will consider doing that on Monday. This coming Monday, we are going to have our patron hangouts. So if you're a fan of the show, Patreon is a great way to help support our content and what we do. We get demonetized like a lot. It's probably 3/4 of our shows. It's adult content. We take giving you accurate information very seriously, and sometimes that information is not pleasant or easy to look at. I imagine there'll be a couple of moments like that today. So if you want to support this channel, become a member or become a patron, and that's one great way to help. But without further further ado, because I don't think you guys are here to listen to that spiel, let me introduce one of our regular guests, Commander Lance McMillan. Commander, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Good to see you. And also, today, a very special guest, Operator Starsky. Operator Starsky, welcome.
Thank you so much.
So, Operator Starsky, just a little bit about you. Now, you've got a YouTube channel. It's got about 300,000 subscribers, and you talk a lot about the war. So, who are you?
I'm a press officer for the Rapid Response Brigade of the National Guard of Ukraine. But this channel is my private channel, basically. It's not regulated by my command. It's my own thing. And since I think first or maybe second week of this invasion in my country, I decided to start a blog in English to communicate with international society, because we received a lot of support from all over the world. And I decided that international society should have some kind of source of information to learn more about what happens in Ukraine.
And we have a link to that in the description, so we hope you will go and check that out. So tell us a little bit about your background. You were born in Ukraine to a military family, is that right?
Yeah, it's true. My father was a military back in the Soviet army before Ukraine became independent, and we had to travel a lot around the country. And then as soon as the USSR collapsed, my dad became an officer of the independent Ukraine. So he played huge role in creating and developing armed forces of Ukraine. Actually, I never thought about becoming a military myself, but at some point we were attacked by our neighbors, and I decided that it's time to, continue our family tradition.
So in 2013, you became a protester. What were you protesting?
We were participating in the protest action against dragging our country into this association with Russia, because majority of Ukrainians wanted to become part of Europe. We think of ourselves as Europeans, and in 2013. Our former president, our former dictator, Viktor Yanukovych, at first he wanted to sign this association with the European Union. Everybody were welcoming that. But then he talked to Putin, and Putin convinced him to change his mind and sign association with Russia, which was completely against the people's will. That's why people were protesting, and at some point, this peaceful protest was brutally dispersed. There were basically students, unarmed students, teenagers. They were brutally beaten by police, and that caused massive uprising in Ukraine. And we decided to remove this dictator, remove the influence of Russia, and basically we returned our right to be a democratic state and elect whatever president we want, and we were successful in this regard.
So you were, when you first joined the military, what were you doing?
In the end of 2014, I joined a voluntary police battalion, and we had something like 34 police battalions that were supervised by the Ministry of Interior of Ukraine. And we participated in the anti-terrorist operation in Donbass, in cities like Krasnohorivka, Kurakhove, Pisky, Marinka, Verkhnetoretsk, and plenty of others.
Is that where you first saw combat?
Yeah, yeah.
So when Putin took Crimea, what was the general thinking between you and it's an unfair question to ask you to speak for all Ukrainians, but you're the closest thing we have to a source over there. So what was your view, and what in your mind was the general view of Ukrainians when he took Crimea?
When he took Crimea, everybody realized that we should prepare ourselves to fight it back, because this is our land. And of course, Putin was saying a lot of bullshit about local self-defense forces, which were basically Russian troops without patches. Exactly what he did later in Donbass, and everybody knew he lies. Everybody. So our main idea was to arm ourselves, unite into voluntary battalions, because again, Ukrainian armed forces were pretty much destroyed by corrupted pro-Russian government that we had for years in Ukraine, and we had to rebuild our armed forces, our security sector. So it was a very, very hard task for Ukrainian people in 2014.
When he started talking about invading, going further into the Donbass region and going into Ukraine, there was a mixed reaction. A number of people were saying, he's always threatening this, it's just saber rattling, and some people were like, oh my God, maybe this time he's serious. When did you realize that that he was serious about this?
It was a bit different, because even like 2 days prior to this invasion, he kept repeating that he was not going to attack Ukraine. And he only started talking about helping the people of Donbass probably like a day or two prior to this invasion. So that, by the way, interesting fact is that that was exactly the date, February 18th, was the first day in the history of Donbass when they heard this air alarm sound for the first time. Why it's important is because, Russians love to claim that Ukraine bombed Donbass for 8 years, but this year was like the first time they heard this air alarm. Probably in December, I realized that Putin was gonna attack, because he had those trainings. Russian army had trainings on the territory of Belarus for quite a while, and they had those rhetorics that their army is the strongest in the world and they were gonna kill everybody and things like that. In December, they changed their rhetorics, and they started saying that they were not going to attack, that they're a peaceful nation, that they love Ukrainians, and things like that. And exactly that moment, I realized that I got to prepare my bag and probably do something, because, I realized that there's a specific way you got to know how to read and listen Russian messages, right?
Mm-hmm. So when the invasion finally happened, what was the mood like in Ukraine? What were people thinking?
People were, I would say, they were shocked. I wouldn't say that there was a lot of panic in the society, but they were shocked. They were scared, of course, and again, it's because of this Russian propaganda, you know, everybody thought that this army would just roll across Ukraine and, you know, destroying and killing everybody and things like that. And of course, because a lot of experts all around the world were saying that Ukraine will have to give up in like 3 days, everybody probably thought that, yeah, that's the case. It's gonna happen. Meanwhile, like army men were just doing their job, and I can't have to give up in 3 days, but at the same time, I cannot say that we were sure that we were gonna win. So we were just doing our job, performing our duties, and things like that.
As I said this last night, we had Commander McMillan on last night to discuss what's happening in Russia right now, and I said this, which was, you know, when the war started, Russia was thought to have the second best military on the planet. Now they barely have the second best military in Ukraine. So one of the things that I had asked you about before, and I wanted to ask you about again, when the Soviet Union fell, they had a lot of nukes, and some of those nukes were in Ukraine. Ukraine became its own country, but is now in possession of a good deal of Soviet hardware, including nuclear devices, in accordance with the non-proliferation motif, the attempt to reduce the number of countries that have nuclear weapons. The U.S. was very strongly pushing Ukraine to give up all of these weapons in exchange for security guarantees. It's kind of interesting how it's written. It's not entirely clear what the U.S. will do other than go to bat for Ukraine if they get invaded. But Russia certainly agreed never to invade Ukraine. U.S., U.K. agreed to support Ukraine. This was called the Budapest Accords, and in them, it strongly suggested at a minimum that the U.S. would come to the aid of Ukraine if it gets invaded. So I assume that most Russians are keenly aware of these accords. Most Ukrainians are aware of these accords, and Ukraine did in fact give up nuclear weapons that it had in exchange for some assurances of security. Are Ukrainians aware of these accords, and how are they feeling at this point about those accords and the exchanges that they made?
Of course, Ukrainians are aware, and I can say that we were talking about them a lot in the beginning of this invasion, because at some point it became clear to everybody that no country participant of those accords will come to Ukraine to protect our country. So from what I remember, in that memorandum, there were words about ensuring security and stuff like that, but it didn't work. So I can say that Ukrainians felt pretty much betrayed. Plus, our president mentioned that a lot during the first months. So yeah, it was like a feeling of betrayal in Ukrainian society. I can definitely tell you that, because Ukrainians made this gesture. We had the second biggest nuclear arsenal in Europe, basically, and we made this gesture to become closer to our friends, closer to Europe, to improve our relations with the rest of the world, which I think was completely right, because that's what we have to do. We have to improve our relations. Yeah, that's why a lot of Ukrainians felt, let's say, betrayed. On the other hand, now we can see that practically all the countries of Europe help us with weapons and there's a lot of volunteers from different countries that come to Ukraine. I can say that the biggest amount of volunteers comes from the US and the UK. So that's the thing.
So I want to pass this off to Commander McMillan in a few minutes and see if he's got any questions. We've now sort of come all the way up to the war. I did want to ask one other question, which I thought was interesting. So you started your channel when the war started. You've been accused of being biased against Russia, which I think is an interesting accusation considering what's been going on. How do you answer that charge?
First of all, I'm Ukrainian officer. It would be weird if I was like, speaking on behalf of Russian soldiers. And another thing is being unbiased means that I have to say something good about our enemies, right? And there's a problem. Because there's nothing I can say about them which would be considered good, especially after all their atrocities and everything they did to Ukraine.
Do you hate Russians?
I guess so. Because we are human beings and we have feelings.
Well, I saw in one of your videos, though, that you did differentiate between good Russians and sort of the rest. So it strikes me you maybe don't hate all Russians. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some good guys. For example, those who fight in Russian Legion that defends Ukraine. People who came to Ukraine and help Ukrainians with whatever they can, with humanitarian aid, with charity, with anything. Those people I consider nice people. They are the Russians that I respect. But as for, even Russian opposition, yesterday I talked to the author of Ukraine Matters channel on YouTube, and he said he created this interesting term, Russian pacifists. So there are like Russian activists who came to streets of Moscow and other cities to protest, but the problem was that they were not Russian activists; they were Russian pacifists, unfortunately.
All right, I got a question from Michael Westby, and it's a fair question. I should have thought of this in advance. So he said, if I send a super chat, is there any way to get the funding to Starsky? So here's what we're going to do. All super chats will be sent to the charity of Starsky's choice. So anyone who does a super chat now, YouTube takes out 30% of those super chats. We will send the entire super chat. So we'll eat the 30%. Anything that you send in a super chat will go to Starsky, and I will coordinate this after the show. Any super chats will go to go as Starsky directs. So that should answer your question, Michael. And also, again, the phone lines are open. I'm going to pass this off to Commander McMillan, and I also have some more questions I'm going to ask in a little bit, but I want to make sure that I think this is a great point to make sure the Commander gets some of his questions in. And you can call 484-2 in time. That's 484-246-8463. So any kind of if that's a long distance call for you, you may want to just be aware of that if you have long distance charges, but it's not it's not a toll number. It's not a 900 call in time thing. But anyway, so give us a call and let us know what you want to ask, and you can talk to Operator Starsky. But in the meantime, Commander McMillan, I was wondering if you had any questions that you wanted to ask.
Sure. I'd like to follow up your comment about the activist, pacifist Russians. I think that's a very interesting point. And I wonder Looking at our own experience in this country with anti-war activism, for example, during the Vietnam War, where we had lots of protests going, and arguably those protests were what eventually led to us leaving Vietnam, ending our participation in the war in a large part. So I'm wondering if, in your thinking, just being pacifists for Russians at this point is not sufficient to see them in the light of doing something at least to help you. I understand you would far prefer to have activists who are giving you aid and so forth, but for a lot of people that's a tough thing to do. But trying to let yourself be known as being opposed to what's going on, what is allegedly being done in your name, I think has at least some benefit. Would you comment on that?
Yes. Sorry, the word was not pacifists, but pacifists from.
Pacifists. Okay.
Yeah, from the derivative from the word passive, because.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear
it. Because what they do is wrong. It doesn't work. If you take a look at any protest that takes place in Russia at this point, you can see one guy being brutally beaten up by their police, and 100 people just standing around and making videos. It doesn't work like this. Russian opposition is convinced that they can change anything using democratic protests and things like that in a country that despises
work in an autocracy.
Absolutely. The country that the force, the regime that despises democracy, despises freedom, cannot be changed by peaceful protests. It's nonsense. That's what we learned in Ukraine, because we had to remove a dictator who
with the
killed
Maidan
people.
uprising.
Yes,
yeah, exactly.
And after that, only after that we were able to completely develop our country and evolve in the direction of democracy and freedom. That was the only way, because sometimes you have to fight for democracy, right?
I see. Okay. So, winter is coming, to paraphrase Game of Thrones. How do you see winter impacting both the war itself and the life of the average Ukrainian non-combatant citizen as we're going into that season?
First of all, we live in a cold country where people have to wear 2 pairs of pants for like half a year. That's why I can say that we will totally survive this, especially in more or less peaceful cities and villages. Unfortunately, in such cities as Mariupol, for example, it will be really hard. I'm afraid that a lot of people will suffer big time because services like central heating and things like that don't work in those cities, and of course the occupiers, they completely don't care about the civilian population. So I doubt that they will help locals whatsoever. And as for the front lines, there's like pros and cons, because it depends on winter. If it's gonna be a so-called like dry winter, or we'll have a lot of mud and stuff. But one thing I can tell you for sure is that they will have to spend more fuel to heat, to warm their troops. So they will have higher fuel consumption, and of course the forests change There will be no leaves. Those positions will be completely open for our snipers, for observation in general. So probably it will benefit our armed forces in the first place.
Is Rasputitsa still a significant issue?
I wouldn't say so.
Okay. So, in your view, what constitutes an acceptable, victorious conclusion to the war? And I know Zelensky has said he's enumerated those things, but that's, you know, the opening argument for negotiations. How far do you think it's likely to go if they have to negotiate away things? What would be, in your mind, or the mind of you representing the average Ukrainian, what would be an acceptable compromise position?
0 Russian soldiers on Ukrainian territory.
Okay, and Ukrainian territory extending to the current occupied areas, including Crimea.
Of course, of course.
Okay.
At this point, Ukrainian society is confident about this.
Okay.
So we don't want any compromises. We don't trade our territories. We've lost a lot of men.
Yes.
And Russia should not benefit from this war. They should be punished for this war. Because any negotiations, any, steps towards trading our territories, it's a benefit for Russia. Yeah, they will receive some kind of Ukrainian lands, right? We cannot accept that. They should be punished for what they did.
Okay, I totally agree with you. Would you then say, in your mind, representing the broader Ukrainian population, that, and I'm just taking as a for instance example, not an actual thing, if negotiations ended up saying, okay, you, Russia, get to keep Crimea, but we get back all the other areas, would you consider that to be a defeat or simply a less desirable outcome?
I don't think we're gonna accept that.
Okay.
Definitely. We don't even want to,
Consider.
in Ukrainian society, we don't even like to discuss such things because we have a very strong dedication.
Let me interject real quick.
Sure.
There are elements of the Donbass region that are actually more culturally Russian. If there was an offer from Russia to let those parts, and only those parts, which is significantly less than this idiotic referendum, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, only those parts ceded to Russia, and Ukraine got back Crimea and the rest of the territory that's been lost. Is that something that you think, not necessarily Zelensky or the military, but that the people of Ukraine might say okay to, or not? No.
I don't think so. I can tell you what we would do in case those people would still say, no, we want Russian land here or whatever. We want to live in a Russian environment. We would buy them tickets. As easy as that. Because if you like Russia so much, you can just go and live in Russia.
We'll help you emigrate.
Yeah, definitely. You don't have to bring Russia here.
Okay. Post-war. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Let me do. We got a couple of super chats, so let me hit those super chats. So here's what we're going to do. We also had a few more questions about financing. So it's really this simple. All super chats, 100%, are going to go to the operator of Starsky, and however he dictates is what we're going to do with those. So all super chats are going to be going Operator Starsky. However, we did have someone asked about sending the funding to him directly, so we're going to drop his PayPal in the live chat. So thank you, Dick, for getting us that. We appreciate it. So the super chats, we have $5 from Look at the Trees. Take my money. So thank you very much for that and for your support. Michael Westby, $20. It takes bravery to speak out while in an active war zone. I understand that the vast number of Ukrainians felt betrayed by the USA. I'm sure you understand the attitude amongst many of the public is that we should have sent aid. That's Michael Westby, $20. Thank you, Michael. And again, we'll be sending all of this to Operator Starsky. Lost Bohemia for, oh dear Lord, 𝐒𝐸𝐿. I don't know what any of these currencies are. I should really learn. I apologize. It's 20
Czech kroner.
Czech. I will bet you that is it. Thank you. Thank you for fighting. You are protecting CZ. So that would be
Czech Republic.
Czech Republic. Yeah. Okay. 2 hearts. So which is of course absolutely true. Actually, the reality is, I think this is something that we should acknowledge. There's a number of people, and I've had many discussions with these people who say, listen, they may take Ukraine and they're just going to stop there. Of course, they won't risk World War III going into some other area. We don't know what they're going to do. I think they absolutely would. I think they've demonstrated, and this is what Operator Starsky was talking about. They always say, "Oh, hey, we'll stop here," and we talked about this last night, and then they just keep going.
No, Hitler stopped at the Sudetenland. There was no World War II.
Exactly. So I think it's almost guaranteed he would not stop at Ukraine, but the reality is we don't know. So the question is, do we take that risk and do we encourage him to go on by not having consequences? So really, it from where I'm sitting, it looks like Ukraine is the front lines of keeping Russia from overrunning Europe, which is, I think, essentially what they would like to do. Again, Commander McMillan talked about that last night, reconstituting the old Soviet Union. But anyways, thank you guys very much for those super chats. We've got one more. Estella Havisham, $20 sticker. It's people describe these stickers. I don't know that I can describe it. She's holding up a trophy. Thank you very much, Estella. We really appreciate the super chat. We'll make sure that gets to Operator Starsky as well. So, having said that, yeah, I think Ukraine is doing the world a service, and I think as much as we could have or maybe should have done more, I think our leaders recognize that, and that's one of the reasons why Ukraine has been getting the support it has, and with luck, it will continue. Anyways, having said that, what I'd like to do is have Commander McMillan continue with a few questions. I may have a follow-up or two, and then if a Xandering is available, he's here, but we'll see if he's available, and if he is, I'm sure he's got some questions. So, but Commander McMillan, once again, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, in a post-war environment, what do you think will need to be done to help restore Ukraine? I mean, I'm concerned, honestly, that when the fighting stops, everybody's sympathy and outpouring of support for Ukraine will essentially disappear. And to my thinking, having lived in countries that were war zones and seen the results of that kind of thing, I really want to make sure that that part of what is going to happen is fully considered and something is done to that end. So what would you say are the choose your top 3 priorities for rebuilding, if you will?
First of all, I think that it's gonna be a bit opposite because at this point, people who choose to stay neutral and not to support Ukraine, they feel safe No bombs are falling around them. They can sleep well, like for the whole night, because they're not they don't wake up to air alarms, and like it fits them, those people. They don't have to go to Ukraine, or they don't have to do anything with such horrible thing as war. Thinking about war is inconvenient. We don't like those things as human beings, right? We have this self-protecting mechanism inside of us. It will be much easier to come to a peaceful country and just help, because again, one way or another, after the war, Ukraine will be open to everybody. I'm sure there will be a huge amount of international construction agencies that would come to Ukraine. We already started building budget for rebuilding Ukraine, and I'm sure that we will hire a lot of organizations, a lot of people who would like to come and help us rebuild our country. So I think that they will have much more opportunities to do that, including, psychological aspect of this. Yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm very encouraged to hear that your government is already making provisions to lay aside funding for the post-war period. That's very, very encouraging. That very foresighted. This may be something you're not comfortable with addressing, and that's fine. We hear a lot in the news about Russian losses. We get lists of how many tanks, aircraft, etc. have been destroyed. We get almost nothing on how badly Ukrainian forces are suffering. And I understand that's a operational security classification kind of thing that you don't want to get into. But I'm just curious how, if you can give a sense of how bad it has been in broad terms.
I can say that Ukrainian losses that were made public by our general staff, who said that we have lost around 9,000 soldiers dead, are probably somewhat realistic, because we have quite a lot of our losses in terms of wounded soldiers. The difference between Ukrainian and Russian losses is that 3 or 4 Russian wounded soldiers. In Ukraine, it's 1 versus 8. So we have a dramatically higher number of wounded soldiers, which means that basically to save more lives. That's why their losses are bigger, of course, because they are the attackers.
Yes.
And of course, because they were using less prepared troops, like those mobilized in the terrorist-controlled territories, and they use them basically like cannon fodder. So a lot of them died.
Yeah, and I'm willing to bet that their medical services are substantially less than what the Ukrainian army has. So that contributes to it. Interesting. The other question, and after this I'll turn it back over to Nick. Talk to me about prisoner of war situation on both sides. I mean, we heard recently that some of the forces from the Azov battalion who had fought at Mariupol were released and are now in Saudi Arabia for the duration. But there are more, I assume, prisoners on both sides from the conflict than just that one isolated unit.
Yeah, of course. And they were talking not only about Azov, because Azov is part of the National Guard of Ukraine, and a lot of guys from Ukrainian Marines, for example, and or policemen that were captured, they were also exchanged for this Viktor Medvedchuk. Viktor Medvedchuk is Putin's. No, it's like Putin is Medvedchuk's daughter's godfather.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a nice catch, in my opinion.
One royal is more important than 250
Yeah,
civilians. You're just peasants.
Yeah, it was nice. So there's quite a lot of POWs on both sides. That's fact. There's quite a lot of POWs, Ukrainian POWs that are not in the list. For example, Ukrainian National Guardsmen that were defending Chernobyl power plant during the first day of invasion. For quite a long time, they were not in the list of POWs, and we had no idea where they were. I think the situation changed because we started talking more about them, and we started raising awareness about this, and we managed to change it. So there's quite a lot of them, and the problem is that there's quite a lot of Ukrainians that were removed from Ukraine and relocated to Russia. Those can be used to blackmail Ukrainian authorities as well, because there's a lot of kids, and I'm talking like tens of thousands.
Yeah.
They're all located in the filtration camps. There's more than 60 filtration camps around Russia. Basically like gulags, only a bit more civilized, but we don't know for sure. And that's a big problem because we have no idea how to return them. It's a big issue, actually.
What about the Ukrainian care of Russian prisoners? I think we can imagine that the Russians are not taking particularly good care of their prisoners. They have a wonderful history of that, but I'm assuming that Ukraine is actually making an effort to try to adhere somewhat, at least, to Geneva Accords and so forth.
Of course. First of all, we have a lot of observers from the Red Cross who have access to those POWs at any time, and other representatives. Plus, as I said, majority of Ukrainians now hate Russians, but we do everything to make sure that we control our hate, that it doesn't turn us into Russians. So another thing that we want to return our men. We don't leave our men behind. That's why we don't want to, commit any atrocities to those guys, because we don't want anything bad to happen to our guys. So I can assure you that Russian POWs definitely will not be castrated in Ukraine. That's 100%. I do everything I can to bring this information to Russian mothers. They will not be castrated. Ukrainian army promises this, and they will not be shot.
Yeah, and I know that the Russian propaganda that's circulating internally to Russia is that you guys are doing all sorts of horrific things to people. So, yeah, I just wanted to make sure we got that out there, that the way I have viewed this from the start is that Ukraine is trying to take the high road, and the Russians are trying to dig a trench under the low road. So,
basically, yeah. Just in a second, I will send Nick a video. So it was. There was a video of a Russian POW that was captured in Ukraine. He was interviewed by Ukrainian journalists, and I dropped it into the internal chat. He was interviewed by Ukrainian journalists. He was given a phone, and he had a chance to call his mother via video chat, and he talked to his mother or wife. And of course, we had all this recorded on camera by those journalists. After his return, he made an interview, and they were like talking, sitting there talking like normal people, you know. After returning to Russia, he made an interview with his media where he said that he was tortured, beaten, and Ukrainians removed his phone and never let him call his family, even despite the fact that it's on video and stuff like that. So the best way to react to Russian media is probably ignoring
not believe
that.
anything it says.
Yeah. Ignoring is the best way.
Yeah.
All right, let me, I can snag this here, although there's, sorry.
As they used to jokingly say, I was going to say, as they used to jokingly say during the Cold War, there's truth, Russian truth, and then there's Pravda.
Ah!
I remember that newspaper. Yeah.
All right,
It was used as a toilet paper. LOL.
Yeah, it was bad toilet paper.
Yeah.
All right, I thought I had this here, but this doesn't quite look right. No. All right, hold on one second. All right, I'll let me get that up in a second. So we actually had. Let me deal with. Okay, what I'm going to do is so 20 pounds from Gaming with Robin, and she had a question. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold on to that question because I do want to ask it, but I think that that connects to a long discussion of things. Okay, no, that's the. We're not going to do that footage just yet. So let me. Oh, okay. Here we go. So you sent us this video. This is of this is the prisoner that you were just talking about. So let's.
Yes.
All right. Perfect. Let me get that up and. Go.
Как бы, ну, говорить на камеру заставляли, много чего грубо говоря, был нос даже под автоматами.
Вы понимаете, что мы гражданские журналисты, вот это все никак нет, это нас...
Конечно, понимаю.
С нами можно просто побеседовать, и это делается под записи для публикации.
Понятно.
Понятно?
Да.
Все.
Кормили 2 раза в сутки, давали каши по 2-3 ложки.
Тут, я думаю, вас кормят лучше, чем там, ну...
Кормят, но я, наверное, честно набрал уже килограмм, наверное, 6 или 7.
Обзывания, постоянно оскорбления.
Вас в плену кормят лучше, чем там...
Но тут и отношения, что вот даже у командиров все отношения полностью как к людям, ну, как люди поступают, так и поступают. Я просто не могу даже представить, как бы,
конечно,
как там они могут
конечно.
Здесь все по-человечески, здесь все просто.
Как там относятся к нашим пленным, вы можете себе представить из того, как там относятся к вам. Не пленным, а к военным. То есть, если именно...
Хотелось бы, знаете, чтобы они поступали именно так же, как поступают с нами, как здесь относятся, то же самое. Но
мы тоже бы хотели.
Купались мы раз в месяц. Ну, условий не было никаких, получается. Ну, очень было трудно. Домой звонить не давали.
Ну, как только муж мой придет целый, невредимый.
Я приду скоро целый, невредимый.
Но по факту видели мы другое, иначе. То, что сама Украина также обстреливает своих же мирных.
Ты только послушай меня. Просто я тебе скажу, что вот здесь и глаза открываются по-другому.
Ну, Ну, только давай сейчас не надо лишнего говорить, хорошо? Тебе еще сюда возвращаться и здесь жить. Просто об этом. Ты собираешься оставаться там.
Я не собираюсь оставаться как там, я ничего лишнего не сказал. Я сказал все, что я увидел на своих глазах. А то, что лишнего я ничего не сказал.
Насчет обменов говорили, Россия всему виной, Россия не дает, Россия...
Я думаю, все равно все же всех как бы обменяют, просто дело времени, когда Россия успокоится и соберется с мыслями уже забрать своих военнопленных и отдать Украине и их же военных.
Это очевидно будет в тот момент, когда Россия соберется с мыслями и поймет, что им здесь вообще
делать нечего. Спросил, мы останемся живы. Нам ответили четко и ясно, что пацаны, вы нам, ваши трупы нам ничего не нужны, говорит, не нужны. Вы останетесь живы, вас обменяют, не переживайте, все.
You know what struck me watching that?
What?
Is in the setting where he's being interviewed by the journalist, he looks comfortable, he looks alert, actually smiles a little bit occasionally. And then you see him, at the airport where he's been returned home. And I swear to God, he looks like he's been beaten to shit by somebody. It's like, we want you to say bad things about them. Okay.
We're going to get into that in just 1 minute. We're going to get into that in a minute because Operator Starsky had a video on that, which I think was hilarious, and we're gonna get into. But before we do, so we had been talking about POWs, and most Americans live a very charmed life, and things are extremely easy in the U.S. compared to other countries. I think when 9/11 happened, that was kind of a wake-up call to all of us that we can be touched by other people and countries if they are interested in doing so. And every American knew somebody who was directly related to a victim of 9/11. So it was a very traumatic thing sort of seared into our consciousness. You had said, I think it was 3 weeks ago, that you had lost 2 friends, and I was watching you stream talking about two friends of yours who had been killed, and your reaction was it clearly had an impact on you, but it also seemed like, unfortunately, it was it's life in the country that you're in right now, given what Russia has done. Could you talk a little bit about what life is like right now, and what life is like for A, the average citizen, and then B, for members of the military in Ukraine right now?
It's different for people. For example, here in Kiev, I'm in Kiev, despite the fact that probably whole Ukraine is a front line at this point because of their missile threat and their nuclear threats. But Kiev is comparably safer place. So except for unfortunate missile strike, probably not much can happen here. Then on the front lines and those cities that are closer to the front lines, is completely different. They have multiple missile strikes and aviation strikes every day. They are constantly shelled by Russian artillery. And I can say that it's quite different for everybody. But I can totally tell you that a lot of us lost our friends, our families, relatives, even those relatives that live in Russia, for example. They are lost. And it's a big tragedy because because they are so isolated in terms of information, brainwashed. They think that yeah, like Ukraine is full of Nazis that run around killing Russian-speaking people, even despite the fact that like 1/3 of Ukrainians speak Russian language, and this ruins relations between families, meaning that we're not only losing our beloved ones physically, we also lose them in such a way as well, which in my opinion is also a crime, big crime.
Well, Titan's been dropping the link to our Discord. We are a news show. We cover any kind of current events and news. We've been covering the situation in Ukraine since well before the invasion. And we have channels in there for gaming, politics, and any kind of topic that you'd be interested in. We have two Ukraine channels. One has to be, it's a sort of separate NS, not suited for work because we do try to shine a light on some of the atrocities that we see, and some of our shows have been unfortunately very difficult. But one thing I want to talk about is the war crimes and atrocities being committed by Russia. And normally I try to be, it hasn't been proven or demonstrated. We've seen the photographs and we know what's going on, and there are independent observers. So we know this is happening. We know they're executing people. We know they're torturing people. This is a photograph that you had sent. It's not too graphic here, but it's not what we have on the Discord. What is this a photograph of?
So this is the photograph of a mass grave that was discovered in Bucha shortly after liberation of pre-Irpinia area. And we were there with journalists from CBS News, and that's exactly when I made those pictures. I never published them anywhere before. But yeah,
you took this yourself?
To you. Yes. We were near that grave with those journalists. I tried to make those pictures because people at some point should see them. Today we've been there with American volunteer. And he said that it's not his. He was concerned because he thought that I could think some bad things about him. Like he said, I'm not hunting for like gorish things, and I was like, it's okay because I think that people should visit this place and they should learn about this place. So I took those pictures in Bucha, and until today I never published them. But I think that I should.
Can I ask for clarification on something on this? Is this the condition the site was in when your people liberated the site, or is this they exhumed the bodies after liberation?
After liberation. So some of those bodies were already in the bags. They were put in those bags by our investigators. Probably like on the 5th or 6th day after the liberation, the international investigators also arrived to the scene, and they were operating in the area. So I was there during different periods of this investigation, so I could basically see what they were doing. And there are some things that I will never forget.
Well, and we've seen literally the Russians have taken territory and taken civilians, decapitated them, and put their heads on pikes. We're talking literally medieval level activities, which again we do have it's one of the channels on the Discord, and we do catalog this because I don't think you can have a discussion about what's really going on without having a discussion about what's really going on. So we had a 20-pound super chat, and I've actually forgotten the name, so let me go back. But she had asked a question, which I said I would save, and we are now prepared for, which is, given all of these things that you are seeing some pretty horrific things happening to towns that have friends and family. Friends and family are in constant jeopardy throughout the entire country, and you're seeing things like this. Oh yes, it was Gaming with Robin. Thank you. You're seeing this happening to your fellow countrymen, and this is your way of life now. How do you keep your mental health, and how do people in your country maintain their mental health in light of what's happening?
We have this strong immunity, which is our national skill. We joke a lot and make fun of our enemies a lot. Of course, you cannot joke forever. For example, I have to attend plenty of funerals and speak to widows and kids. Sometimes, like, we have specific service dedicated to this, our military psychologists and our basically military psychologists, but sometimes I have to do that too, because our military psychologists, you know, they're also human beings, and there are cases when you cannot just joke and, you know, make fun. It's inappropriate. So I just try to stay emotionless as much as I can, because we have to stay professional. We have to stay cold, at least until this war is finished.
Well, you do on your channel, you've got skits that you do, and I imagine that that's sort of part of the trying to stay sane. And we had when Commander McMillan was talking about the the way they interview people in Russia, it reminded me of one of your skits. So this is, I highly recommend, please remember that Operator Starsky has his own channel, and he covers what's going on in Ukraine. He covers, you get to see it firsthand, but he also does a number of skits. So let's see this skit here on what it's like to be interviewed in Russia. So let's take a look at this.
Are you satisfied with the results of the special occupational operation in Ukraine?
Yeah, so funny. I'm not being sent to Gulag after answering this, right? Right? Special operation? Oh, yes, it's good. It's very, very good.
Do you think your country respects the freedom of speech?
I prefer not to answer this question for security reasons. What is freedom?
Will you be protesting against corrupted or repressive government?
What is freedom? that was my favorite. We're gonna do one more.
You have a wicked sense of humor.
Let's do this other one. This is okay. The battle against the door. That was a good one. The Techno House. The Battle of Techno House was the one Russian soldier with an AK-47 against a door. Unfortunately, it was total losses on the Russian side. Anyways, but I don't think we have that queued up. I should have. That's a good one. So here's one more.
Hey, bratishka, give me your money. What? Are you trying to rob me? No, I'm not robbing you. Now give me your money. Why? They were always mine. Now give them to me. Your underwear too. This is ridiculous. Ouch! Why did you do that? I did nothing. You did it to yourself. Ow, goddammit, stop it! Stop what? Hey mate! Here, grab the gun! Сука, my balls! You Nazi! You too! Everybody wants to kill me!
All right. So, all right. Well, I think 𝐶𝐸𝐿𝐼𝐸 hopefully is free now. 𝐶𝐸𝐿𝐼𝐸, you there? I give him a minute. He probably didn't. He wasn't aware I was gonna call him out now. We'll give him a sec to.
You didn't do my favorite one, which is the Russian victory parade in Kiev.
Oh yeah, that was.
I love that one.
I can try to find that if we got his 𝐶𝐸𝐿𝐼𝐸. He may. I know he's busy. This was a difficult time for him. So we'll. All right. If and when his 𝐶𝐸𝐿𝐼𝐸 becomes available, he can make himself known. So I did want to ask one or two other questions. So. You're aware of it. I'm always sort of wondering how much. Thank you. Perfect. I appreciate it. I'm always kind of wondering how much the average Ukrainian cares about Russian politics. It obviously has a huge impact on, a huge impact on your everyday lives. Having said that, A, there isn't a whole heck of a lot you can do about it, and B, you've got far more pressing matters than the ins and outs of what is going on in Russian politics. But you had said something that I found really interesting, which was you have on your channel repeatedly talked about how there are good Russians and there are Russians who oppose this war, and right now there is Putin has said that he's going to be calling up 300,000. And Commander, you said you thought it was closer to 1 million that they're going to be calling up?
There are indications that have suggested that it may be as many as that. I think they were afraid to actually announce that it was going to be that extensive. But as I said, they're going to have trouble processing even 300,000. If you more than triple that number, their already failing logistics system is just going to collapse under the pressure. So we'll see what happens.
So my question is how much are you in tune with the current political system in Russia, and do you have any optimism that Putin is going to be replaced, or that there's going to be any kind of uprising against him?
Absolutely, because, for example, we all hope that he dies of cancer. Sorry,
understandable.
We have plenty of Ukrainian babushkas who curse him every day. I think it works too. Yeah, and it's like his statement about like this partial mobilization didn't change pretty much anything in our minds. We didn't care about it. I can say this: it's very hard to analyze Russian political situation, because we all know that Russian media, like if it's Russian media, it's lies. That's all. And if you want to have some other sources of information, you have to watch Russian bloggers. The problem is they don't talk. They go like, I would like to speak about our current situation in Russia. Unfortunately, I cannot do it because something bad will happen. I will get sucked out into a window. That's why it's very hard. So I hope it answers your question.
I think so. So let's, by popular demand, Commander McMillan, we're going to show one other video from Starsky's channel, and then I think we may have the absolute just brutal battle of Techno House. I think we may have that as per Michael Westby. So let's start with this one.
Okay, you recording? Okay, good. I don't see cops. Okay, I'm Dmitry 𝐒𝐸𝐿𝐽, especially for Russia 24. So here we can see our mighty Russian tanks, our Slava, mighty Russian tanks that finally took control over Kyiv. They're on the streets. Our great tanks, our mighty tankers, they're totally fine. They went to bathroom. It took us only 3 days and 180 days of preparation to take over Kyiv. And what you see here awaits for every Western city. Dmitry 𝐒𝐸𝐿𝐽, блядь.
Well, and the one that's being told to just like it's like, oh, just stay right there. I don't have my mic. Well, you won't need your microphone today. Are you sure? Yeah, no, okay, just stand right there. And then they got the other guy who's like, oh, our Russian blogger was killed today. It's like, wait, what? What are you saying? Oh, so we do have now the Michael reminded me of this one, and so we've let me see.
Are you going to do the Battle of Techno House yet?
I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that right now, and then I'd love to.
That video is very special because it's the opening salvo of the Russians that failed to open.
Yeah. All right. So this is, this is a brutal battle. Severe casualties on the Russian side, so it's reasonably short. But let's get into the just the brutal battle of Techno House.
Can I put my balls in your jaws? Your jaws. Balls in your jaws. Can I? Can I put my balls in your jaws? Your jaws. Balls in your jaws. Can I?
We don't need that music, but there you go. Now he's gonna go in there. So he's going in. Yeah, and he's okay. The door. It turns out the door's locked. Oh, that's a problem. That's there you go. So why don't you just put your rifle down? There you go. You don't need that rifle anyway. There's nobody's gonna just like grab that on you. No, you're good. You're good. Okay, great. Oh, is the door still locked? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. And there he goes. Complete Russian defeat. So we have the casualty list. The army strength was an AK-47 on the Russian side, a door handle on the Techno House side. The door handle won. It was not a complete victory. They had a casualty of one window when he ruthlessly smashed the window and tried to open it from the other side. Casualties on the Russian side include ammunition and a sense of pride and dignity. That is and we do apologize for that. We try not to show, without warning people, battles that are just that difficult to watch, but anyways. Oh, so thank you, Michael, for reminding me of the Battle of Techno House, one of my all-time favorites. 𝐒𝐸𝐿𝐽, how are you? Any thoughts here?
Kind of. I'm in the middle of maneuvering exercises.
Your own, yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to maneuver my own wide behind around this.
Wide load, yeah.
Oh, what the heck are all these things doing? Hair, go away. And unfortunately, I'm in the middle of trying to get stuff unloaded, equipment loaded and moved, and so this darn truck is really starting to annoy me. Forgive me if this was asked at the beginning, because I missed the beginning, but one of the curiosity questions that I had is, Ukraine is very much removed from, especially the United States, not so much from Europe, but I was always kind of wondering what or even if there was an opinion that the Ukrainian people had about the less than lackluster support, I would call it, considering the other things that the United States has gotten involved in, and the fact that they are pretty much just supplying equipment and not a whole lot else to Ukraine. And especially not just the US, but Western powers generally, what the kind of opinion of the Ukrainian people is of the Western powers. Do they think that they're doing enough? Do they understand why we're not doing more? Are they upset about things not being more being done?
I think that pretty much a lot of Ukrainians, after the failure of this Budapest agreement, they pretty much do think this way, because the security of Ukraine that was supposed to be guaranteed by the US, Russia, and the UK, it didn't work.
Yeah, I've come across I've come across a wide range of opinions regarding Ukraine. Some people are fighting mad that we didn't do anything, or didn't appear to do anything, because again, we had signed all of those agreements guaranteeing the security of Ukraine for giving up, nuclear weapons. So the fact that we didn't do anything, or didn't do what appeared to be very much, really incised a few people. And then there's some other people that are like, look, Ukraine isn't all that much better than Russia, and this is not an area that we want to get involved in. We've been in war for almost 30 years now, and we're sick of it. Let's keep our businesses out of other countries. So I've seen a wide gamut, and I just kind of wonder what the sentiment of the Ukrainian people was towards the Western powers. If they were upset, or if they were understanding. I mean, ostensibly the reason that most of the Western powers didn't get involved is they didn't want to bring up a situation where NATO forces were directly confronting Russian soldiers. Do you buy any of that stuff? Or is Ukrainian people just like, you guys are full of shit. You said you were going to secure Ukraine, and you absolutely did not. So, is this going to affect relations going forward?
I don't think that it's going to affect relations, because still we have plenty of support. We have vehicles, we have artillery systems, we have intelligence provided by the United States, and it helps us big time. The problem is that there is a reason, for all this. And this reason is called Russian invasion that wasn't supposed to happen. And it's not only, that we gave out our nuclear weapons in order to become closer with the free world, with civilized countries, and it failed. I mean, what we were promised, right? Also, we are now threatened by the nuclear weapons, and hadn't we have those weapons donated, given out, I mean, probably the situation would be a bit different today. I mean,
let me ask, and I do want to get more from 𝐒𝐸𝐴nder, but I do want to ask while we're here, if Russia says we will leave and we will return the lands that we've taken, with an agreement that you do not join either the EU or NATO, is that something? I mean, are Ukrainians interested in joining either organization? You can't join NATO right now because a country that is currently in war can't join NATO. But are you still interested in joining NATO? You, as in the country, and or I know you guys are moving ahead rapidly with the EU. What if Russia said, we'll leave if you promise never to join either?
It's not the case. The main point of these negotiations is that we have to have those negotiations from the standpoint of power, of our advantage. It's not like, Russians would definitely like such negotiations to take place. Definitely. That's why they were trying to contact our president, our authorities, and have such negotiations. I can tell you, like 100%, it already happened. And they were trying to talk to us and do such offers. But our president said that there's no way we will have such negotiations before we have advantage in terms of power. That's why that's the only way. We should make offers in terms of such negotiations. We should make offers. We should demand Russia to pay us reparations. We should demand Russia to give us those war criminals who were killing people and raping Ukrainian women. We should demand those people to face trial and be responsible for their actions. And that's the only kind of negotiations that we can think of.
Yeah, return of
nothing like
peoples, etc.
Yeah. Yes, nothing like trading our territories or trading our mission, right? Our ideas. No, it doesn't work this way.
All right, Zandering, anything else you wanted to ask?
I think he's offline.
Well, yeah, he's there, but I know he's doing multiple things at once. So this was just barring that, Commander McMillan, anything else you wanted to ask before we wrap this up?
This is purely conjectural. So, what, in your estimation, is the optimum outcome for Ukraine?
Probably it's removing Russian troops from our territories. It's gonna be much harder in terms of liberating Crimea, I think, because it's a hard task. It requires amphibious operations. It requires taking care of their fleet and things like that. But our optimal outcome is removing Russian troops from 100% territory of Ukraine. We're not gonna take their territories. We don't want that. We want only what belongs to us. And make sure that Russians will never, ever try to attack us once again. And to make it possible...
Along those lines, what would you see as a necessary precondition, a security guarantee for Ukraine?
Those were made public by our president just 2 days ago during the UN Assembly. So there were 5 steps that would guarantee security, which involve security of people, which involve international cooperation, probably reformation of the United Nations as well, because let's face the truth, right? A terrorist state is, for some reason, has this right of vetoing, and they are member of Security Council of the United Nations, not like they invite ISIS or Taliban representatives, right? And of course, they should be punished for what they did, because if they are not punished, then other potential aggressors will understand that they are allowed to do whatever they want. So they should be punished.
Okay.
Is Russia, in your view, comparable to ISIS and Al Qaeda and other terrorist organizations?
I cannot see what ISIS did that Russians didn't. Hostages, nuclear blackmail, terrorist acts, decapitating people on camera, or like torturing people on camera. Basically, yeah, they're a terrorist state from all perspectives.
Okay, we've got a question here I want to ask, and I think I'm going to wrap this up. We've dropped your link again in the live chat. It's also in the description. So we know that Germany recently said, if I recall, that they would not be sending more tanks. What do you think about the amount of support that Germany has given towards the Ukrainian military? What do you think personally, and what's the view of those around you, your sample size of people that you know?
It's absolutely the same opinion as we have about the US or the UK, for example, is that we respect the support of people, because it appears that there are just tens of millions of common people that are decent, and they support Ukrainians and do whatever they can to help. We appreciate that. And of course, we appreciate decent people in governments of those countries. We appreciate decent people in international institutions as well that support Ukraine. So, of course, like returning to your previous question, yeah, we think that Budapest Memorandum, Budapest Agreement didn't work, unfortunately, but it doesn't mean that we do not appreciate the help that we receive, because we owe you big time, because we're alive.
All right. Well, you and I met, so I've known of the Shills for some time. We traveled in the same circles and even had the same producer, the Shills and In Time, for quite some time. And Dick Dawson invited me on, and I came on, and that's where you and I met. And it was a very good show. I enjoyed it very much. I enjoyed meeting you. I enjoyed being on that show. You've been on the Shills every Friday in the afternoon, starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. And you and I will be back on the Shills tonight, 5 p.m. Eastern, so in just a few hours. But having said that, you spent a lot of time with us here on In Time Now. So thank you very much for your time and for your candor and honesty. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for invitation. It was my pleasure.
Can I get one last question?
Yes, go for it.
I guess my one last question, which is, I guess, appropriate at the end of the show, is I know that there are many people that do want to help out, that they feel very strongly that you guys were wronged, especially after promises that were made and unfulfilled, and that they really want to help. And from this part of the world, it's really difficult to tell what would be the most helpful thing to do. So if you have people, or if there's people watching that actually do really want to I guess put their money where their mouth is, what is the best way of actually making an impactful contribution?
The most important thing is not to be neutral. It is the most important thing, because the only way to make sure that the forces of evil are beaten is not to be neutral, not to just pretend nothing happens.
And so let me actually take the floor for a second here. I try not to speak for the entire show very often, because there's a lot of people who contribute to it, and I really don't have a right to sort of speak for everybody. In this case, I will take that liberty. I've spoken with the people who work for the channel for quite some time, and so I feel confident that I can do this and say that on behalf of all of the people on In Time, and our supporters, I think Ukraine so far in this war has represented the best of humanity, and they've done an amazing job against a brutal and very large opponent. And I think all of us are hoping for a quick and, more importantly, just end to the war, which sees Ukraine maintaining itself as a sovereign country and whole, which includes the return of Crimea. So one of the things that we've talked about, and is a genuine problem, is we have problems in the U.S. They're not comparable to what you see in Ukraine, but we have inflation, and we have a former president run amok, and people are talking insurrection and civil war and all sorts of other things. So it's easy to remember just our own problems and think about what we're going through. But the reality is the war that Ukraine is fighting is sparing all of us, is likely sparing all of us from having to fight a much larger war. So in this effort, I think we're all brothers, and I think allowing the Biden administration, allowing our politicians to forget or to do what's convenient for Americans in the short term, which includes dealing with genuine problems we have, but forgetting the fact that we really do have a responsibility to our own generations and to Ukrainian brothers and sisters to support Ukraine as much as possible, I think. So along those lines, perhaps it sounds like what you were saying was to remember and be vocal and make sure that Ukraine stays in the national consciousness, at least in the U.S., and that would be my message, and I think the message for all of us on In Time as well. So anyways, I'm not sure if I cut you off, Operator Starsky, but I want to make sure that you finish that thought.
I just want to say that we all appreciate the support, because we were like an underdog for quite a while, and people only started talking about Ukraine like this year. Seriously, I could never imagine Deep Purple making a song together with Ukrainian singer. And if I was told that last year, I'd probably think that the person who tells me this is probably on drugs. But I'm happy that even despite we have this ugly and brutal war in Ukraine, we have quite a few friends now. And this is important, because friends are important. And the more friends we have, the stronger we are.
All right. So with that said, please go. We'll be joining the shills in about 2.5 hours. The link has been dropped a couple of times in the live chat. The link is also in the description. So it's going to be a lot of fun to hang with you there. But it's a busy day for you. So we appreciate you taking several hours to join us. Would like to invite you back in the future to discuss more if you'd be willing. So thank you, Commander McMillan. Your expertise and I knew you'd have questions that would be important that I couldn't come up with. So I appreciate you coming down. Xandering, thank you so much. We, as I said before, we this stream is going to be demonetized. We've shown some unpleasant images. all the super chats today are going to be going at Starsky's direction, so he and I will be discussing that. But outside of that, if you want to join the channel, if you want to become a patron and support us, we'll be having our patron hangout on this coming Monday, so we'll be dropping more information on that. You can also join our Discord and see how we put the show together, see the news, and have even some influence and say over how we gather the news and what we do for this show. And Commander McMillan is there. Operator Starsky, I hope you'll come in and actually, I think you came in earlier, so we'll be continuing the discussion on our Discord, and we will be on the shills later tonight. So thank you all for joining us, and look forward to seeing you all on the shills in 2.5 hours. Good night, everyone.